In the heart of Crestview, where suburban tranquility was etched into every tree-lined street, and every morning, jog life unfolded with an almost predictable grace. The Willow Creek Trail, a verdant ribbon winding through the community, was more than just a path. It was a promise of serenity, a daily ritual for souls like Eleanor Vance, whose spirit was as bright and unwavering as the morning sun. A dedicated teacher, Eleanor embraced her world with an open heart, her trust in its gentle rhythms unwavering. But even the most idyllic landscapes can harbor unseen depths, and the familiar routines that ground us can, in an instant, be violently unmoored. Beneath the comforting canopy of autumn leaves a hidden current of malevolence, lay dormant waiting for its moment to strike. When a community's most cherished sanctuary is defiled, and a vibrant life vanishes without a trace, what dark secrets does the very earth conspire to keep? The first golden rays of dawn kissed the quiet suburban streets of Crestview, illuminating autumn leaves in vibrant hues of amber and crimson. Inside her impeccably kept home, Eleanor Vance, a woman whose inner light rivaled the morning sun, stirred with quiet purpose. At 28, Eleanor was more than a middle school history teacher. She was a vibrant force, a beacon of enthusiasm, whose laughter echoed through Northwood Middle, her passion for the past igniting young minds. Her mornings began with a precise, comforting ritual, the rich, dark aroma of freshly brewed coffee, a quiet hour spent meticulously polishing lesson plans, ensuring every historical detail shown. Yet the true commencement of Eleanor's day, her personal sanctuary, lay beyond the front door. The Willow Creek Trail, a winding ribbon of nature, threading through the heart of Crestview, offered escape and meditative solace. Here, the rhythmic thud of her running shoes against the packed earth offered a steady counterpoint to the quiet demands of her profession, the bustling energy of her classroom. It was a space where thoughts crystallized clarity, found amidst the rustling leaves and the gentle murmur of the creek. On this particular Tuesday, the air held a crisp, invigorating chill, the trees performing their final spectacular show of autumn color. Eleanor pulled on her bright pink running top, a signature splash that perfectly mirrored her personality, and laced up her shoes. She leaned over her husband, Mark Vance, still deep in slumber, pressing a soft kiss to his temple. He stirred a sleepy "be safe," escaping his lips a casual farewell exchanged countless times, always implicitly understood to be fulfilled. Eleanor offered a silent, loving smile, a silent promise of her return before heading out. Stepping into the nascent day, the cool air invigorating her skin, she took a deep, fortifying breath. The world felt fresh, vibrant, full of quiet promise, a perfect autumn morning, whispering of peace and continuity. But as Eleanor began her familiar stride down the sidewalk toward the Willow Creek Trail, the comforting predictability of her morning ritual was unknowingly drawing her towards an unforeseen malevolent divergence. With each confident step, the line between her sanctuary and a looming profound shadow blurred about to be tragically and irrevocably crossed. Mark Vance stirred, pulled from a dreamless sleep by the unusually stark sunlight streaming through the bedroom window. Eleanor, typically a quiet whirlwind of post-run energy, was still absent. He glanced at the digital clock on the bedside table, 8:47 a.m. A subtle disquiet, a faint tremor of unease began to prickle through his morning haze. Eleanor's customary 75-minute run rarely extended beyond an hour and a half, even on her more ambitious days. He dismissed it initially, Perhaps she had paused to chat with a fellow teacher on the trail, or discovered a particularly captivating bird to observe she often did. Yet, as the minutes bled into one another, ticking relentlessly past 9 o'clock, the casual concern hardened into an unsettling conviction. He poured a second cup of coffee, its once comforting aroma now failing to soothe. He tried her phone, the sterile automated drone of voicemail, typically unremarkable now, pulsed with chilling ominousness. A cold, hard knot tightened in his stomach, a premonition that defied the logical explanations he desperately tried to construct. Unexpected trail closure, a forgotten errand, each rationalization crumbled under the weight of the inexplicable. Eleanor was meticulous, dependable. This uncharacteristic delay felt profoundly wrong. By 9:30 a.m., Mark could no longer bear the stillness. He pulled on a jacket, his movements growing jerky, frantic. He drove their street slowly, then turned onto the familiar road paralleling the Willow Creek Trail, his eyes frantically scanning the path, his hope a fragile, rapidly diminishing ember. He called her name, his voice hoarse into the rustling autumn leaves, but only the wind whispered back, carrying his mounting fear into the void. The path, usually dotted with other joggers and dog walkers, seemed eerily desolate to him. Now, a gaping void where vibrant life should have pulsed. His heart hammered a frantic drumbeat, driven not by exertion, but by a burgeoning terror that constricted his chest. Further along, near a less frequented offshoot that wound deeper into the woods, his headlights snagged on a familiar flash of color. He slammed on the brakes, the tires squealing softly on the damp asphalt. There, half hidden by a cluster of ferns, lay an empty plastic water bottle, the exact brand Eleanor favored, its pink cap distinctive. A shard of ice pierced his carefully constructed composure. He exited the car, hands trembling, and walked gingerly along the trail's edge. Further on, nestled amidst freshly disturbed leaves, lay a single bright pink earbud, its delicate wire tangled around a fallen twig. Each object, a silent scream of wrongness, painted a horrifying tableau of a struggle of a life violently interrupted. These were not merely discarded items. They were silent accusations, fragments of Eleanor's last known moments, now exposed, bearing their tragic testimony. The creek gurgled nearby, its indifferent flow carrying a cold, unspeakable secret that only deepened Mark's escalating dread. His breath hitched in his throat, a primal scream caught behind his ribs. The morning's earlier serenity had vanished, replaced by an unsettling silence that now pulsed with an unbearable dread. Mark Vance's raw, trembling voice sliced through the 911 dispatcher's calm query, obliterating the last vestiges of the morning's peace. His choked words painted a horrifying picture: a missing wife, a trail of discarded personal items, the chilling certainty of a struggle. Within minutes, the quiet suburban street, typically defined by manicured lawns and autumn foliage, underwent a stark transformation. Sirens wailed, piercing the tranquility as uniformed officers from the Crestview Police Department converged on the entrance to the Willow Creek Trail. What had begun as Mark Vance's private nightmare swiftly escalated into a full-scale missing person investigation, tinged from its very outset with the grim possibility of abduction. Detective Sarah Miller arrived on scene, her gaze immediately sweeping the perimeter. A pragmatic and determined veteran of the homicide unit, Miller moved with quiet authority, her expression a careful mask of professional detachment. Beside her, Detective David Chen, meticulous and observant, surveyed the initial findings: the water bottle, the single earbud. Each object, served as a stark, tragic flag, marking the abrupt end of Eleanor's routine. "This isn't a lost hiker," Miller observed, her voice low, unequivocally factual. "This feels violated." The scene, already being painstakingly documented by forensics teams, spoke volumes in its silence, its unspoken testimony more eloquent than any witness. Eleanor Vance, the beloved teacher, was gone, and the evidence hinted at a profound, violent wrong. The search grid expanded with alarming speed. Patrol officers' faces etched with concern meticulously combed the dense undergrowth bordering the creek, pushing deeper into the woods with each passing hour. K-9 units, their barks echoing through the trees, strained at their leashes' noses to the ground, searching for any scent, any trace. Above, the rhythmic thrum of a police helicopter sliced through the air, its powerful beam systematically scanning the sprawling expanse of the nature preserve. The sheer scale of the operation underscored the gravity of the situation. Eleanor was not merely misplaced, she was missing under deeply ominous circumstances. As the frantic search unfolded, Brenda Vance, Eleanor's mother, arrived at the command post, her features contorted by a raw, visceral grief. Her hands trembled, clutching a crumpled photograph of Eleanor, her daughter's radiant smile, a cruel counterpoint to the unfolding horror. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was a whisper of profound anguish. "Such a moment. It shatters you," she later recounted, her eyes haunted. "There's no strength that can withstand it. It simply tears at the very fabric of your being." The community, once feeling secure within the embrace of its natural spaces, now held its collective breath. Whispers escalated into anxious questions, and a cold fog of fear began to creep through the streets. Every passing minute diminished the fragile hope of Eleanor's safe return, twisting the narrative of her vibrant life into a desperate, agonizing cry for answers. Days bled into a week each morning, bringing renewed searches each night, extinguishing the fragile flicker of hope. The absence of any definitive trace of Eleanor or her assailant became a chilling torment for Crestview. Public apprehension, once a murmur, now swelled into a palpable anxiety, the grim notion of a predator haunting their once safe suburban trails taking root. The tireless efforts of law enforcement, supported by hundreds of community volunteers, yielded only frustration. The vast expanse of the Willow Creek Preserve seemed to swallow every clue, every lead, leaving only silence in its wake. Mark and Brenda Vance, adrift in a sea of agonizing uncertainty, clung to each passing moment, their grief a constant, palpable presence, their fervent prayers growing fainter with every sunrise. Then a pivotal break, born from sheer unyielding persistence, finally pierced the shroud of despair. It was late afternoon, the light already beginning to fade, when a volunteer searcher venturing further than most made a horrific discovery. This individual, a retired park ranger intimately familiar with the most secluded corners of the preserve, had pushed into a densely wooded area bordering the creek, a rarely accessed section known for its thick undergrowth and treacherous boggy terrain. It was there, hidden beneath a tangle of gnarled roots and decaying autumn leaves near a particularly isolated bend in the creek, that he found what police had desperately hoped never to encounter. The air, which had carried only the sounds of rustling leaves and the distant gurgle of water, was suddenly filled with the volunteer's raw, guttural cry. Within minutes, the area transformed into a grim, highly restricted crime scene. Eleanor Vance's body lay concealed, a stark desecration of both the natural serenity and the sanctity of a human life. The serene creek, once a symbol of nature's gentle, indifferent flow, now silently bore witness to an unspeakable act, its tranquil surface, reflecting the shock and horror that descended upon the scene. Detective Miller and Detective Chen arrived, their faces hardening as they absorbed the stark evidence of tragedy. The missing person investigation had violently pivoted into a homicide case. Crime scene technicians, their expressions resolute and focused, meticulously processed every inch of the area, sifting through soil, fallen leaves, and broken branches. Each fragment, however, minute became a potential key to unlocking the truth of this brutal act. The discovery confirmed the community's deepest fears. Eleanor, the vibrant teacher, the beloved wife and daughter, had found her final tragic resting place here, far from the familiar safe path she had always run. The trail, once her sanctuary, had become her grave, irrevocably stained by a dark secret it had held captive for too long. The very landscape of Crestview seemed to mourn, draped in a cold, heavy pallor, as the awful truth settled in. Eleanor's body, once a grim endpoint to a desperate search, now became the stark starting point of a meticulous forensic hunt. Crime scene technicians, grim-faced and methodical, descended upon the secluded bend in Willow Creek, meticulously transforming the natural landscape into a grid of intense scrutiny. Every inch of soil was examined, every leaf turned, every branch catalogued. They worked under the oppressive quiet of the dense woods, the only sounds the rustle of their specialized gear and the distant, indifferent gurgle of the creek. Their mission was clear: to coax undeniable truths from the silent earth, to unearth any tangible thread that could lead them to Eleanor's killer. It was Detective David Chen, with his unwavering eye for minute details, honed over years of complex cases, who made the pivotal observation. As he knelt beside Eleanor's remains, a profound sense of injustice settling over him, he noticed something peculiar. Embedded in the dark, damp mud, directly beneath Eleanor's still hand, lay a small, oblong, deep green seed pod. It was distinct, alien to the immediate flora of the discovery site, its smooth surface contrasting sharply with the rough textures of the surrounding undergrowth. Chen carefully documented its precise position, photographed it from multiple angles, and then with gloved hands retrieved it, placing it into a sterile evidence bag. This seemingly insignificant botanical detail would soon become the linchpin of their entire investigation. The seed pod was immediately rushed to the Crestview Forensics Lab, then forwarded to a consulting forensic botanist at the State University, Dr. Evelyn Thorne, known for her expertise in rare local plant species. Dr. Thorne's analysis was swift and definitive. The specimen was identified as the seed pod of Aquatica mirabilis, an exceptionally rare marsh plant. Her report detailed its unique requirements. It flourished only in a very specific, isolated boggy patch, notoriously difficult to access, nestled approximately a mile upstream from the crime scene. This particular bog was almost entirely cut off from the main trail, hidden behind a dense thicket of thorny bushes and a maze of shallow, meandering waterways. It was a place known only to a handful of avid naturalists, dedicated hunters, or long-time locals who possessed an intimate, almost guarded knowledge of the preserve's hidden topography. The revelation struck Detectives Miller and Chen with the force of a sudden downpour, washing away layers of speculation and focusing their efforts with laser precision. This small, verdant seed pod, now quickly dubbed the Creekside Clue, served as undeniable testimony. It suggested, with chilling clarity, that the perpetrator was far from a random passerby. This was someone with profound, unique knowledge of the land, someone who had specifically navigated that hidden, almost impassable stretch of creek where the Aquatica mirabilis grew. They had perhaps carried the clinging mud, and with it the seed pod from that remote bog, unknowingly depositing it at the precise moment of their monstrous act. The evidence, once a microscopic thread, now began to weave a terrifying narrative of the killer's unique, almost symbiotic connection to the very landscape Eleanor had loved. The initial widespread dragnet could now be dramatically narrowed, transforming a sprawling, unmanageable mystery into a targeted search for a specific kind of predator. The answer, they realized, might be hidden in plain sight among those who guarded the secrets of the land. With the Creekside clue as their compass, detectives Miller and Chen honed their focus. The vast pool of initial suspects, once overwhelming, now significantly narrowed to individuals possessing an intricate understanding of the Willow Creek Preserve's most secluded areas. They began to interview dozens of locals, each known for their extensive familiarity with the trail and its hidden offshoots. Among them was Robert Bobby Hayes, a man in his late 40s, outwardly unassuming and reserved. Bobby resided in a small rustic cabin that abutted the very edge of the nature preserve, a dwelling almost swallowed by the dense foliage that was his self-proclaimed domain. Bobby Hayes was a recognized figure in Crestview, often observed on the trail's binoculars perpetually around his neck, a well-worn field guide clutched in hand. He cultivated the image of an amateur botanist and an avid birder, a solitary soul whose greetings were invariably courteous, if somewhat distant. Locals considered him a man intimately tied to the land, someone who regularly volunteered for trail maintenance, diligently clearing fallen branches or marking obscure routes. His reputation was that of a harmless eccentric, a gentle spirit whose consuming passion was the natural world, and whose comprehensive knowledge of local flora and fauna, including even the most obscure patches of rare plants like the Aquatica mirabilis, was legendary. When initially approached by the detectives as part of the broader interview, Sweet Bobby articulated a deep sorrow for Eleanor's tragic death. His voice was soft, his eyes downcast, conveying a palpable sense of commiseration for the desecration of the preserve he cherished. He offered his condolences to Eleanor's family, his demeanor marked by an understated empathy. He also provided an alibi for the morning Eleanor disappeared, claiming he had been fishing on a remote section of Miller's Creek, a tributary flowing into Willow Creek, far from the main trail. He expressed a quiet indignation at the crime, lamenting that such an act could mar his beloved sanctuary. To the casual observer, Bobby Hayes presented as cooperative and genuinely concerned, simply a local whose tranquil nature-centric life had been profoundly shaken by an unthinkable tragedy. He spoke of the trail with an almost sacred reverence, his descriptions of its hidden beauty a testament to his profound connection. He was, by all accounts, exactly the type of individual who would possess the unique botanical knowledge highlighted by the Creekside clue. Yet that very uniqueness, once seen as an innocent passion, now began to cast a long, unsettling shadow. Detective Miller, with her finely honed instincts, detected a subtle, almost imperceptible tremor beneath Bobby's carefully composed exterior. The scientific revelation of the rare seed pod, seemingly so small, had just drawn the investigation inexorably closer to a man who knew the secrets of the land and, perhaps far more, the unique botanical link of the Aquatica mirabilis seed pod to Bobby Hayes' specialized knowledge solidified him as a prime person of interest. Detectives Miller and Chen determined it was time for a more thorough, targeted interview. The sterile hum of the interrogation room, devoid of any personal adornment, offered a stark contrast to the verdant sanctuary Bobby claimed as his own. Bobby, still outwardly composed, was led in his composure, betraying only a slight, almost imperceptible tension in the set of his shoulders. Detective Miller, initiating the interview, employed her practiced, non-threatening approach, a strategy honed over countless hours in similar rooms. She began by discussing his well-known passion for nature, his intricate knowledge of the Willow Creek Preserve. "Mr. Hayes, we understand you know this area like the back of your hand," she began, her voice calm, almost conversational. "You're known for your deep understanding of the local ecosystem, aren't you? Even the rarer plants." Bobby, initially relaxing into the familiar topic, spoke with genuine enthusiasm about the local flora and fauna, his face momentarily softening. He detailed the specific microclimates, the hidden glades, the very patch of boggy land where the Aquatica mirabilis was known to thrive. "It's a marvel, that plant," he mused, a flicker of genuine pride in his eyes. "Hardly anyone knows it's there. You have to really look for it. Know the old deer trails, the places, the water pools." As Bobby elaborated, Detective Chen, his gaze unwavering, observed the subtle shifts in his posture. While Bobby's words conveyed expertise, his eyes, previously engaged, now flickered, darting almost imperceptibly towards the door, then back to Miller. The conversation then subtly veered. Miller shifted her tone, still, even but with an underlying current of purpose. "You mentioned fishing on Miller's Creek the morning Eleanor Vance disappeared, correct?" Bobby's practiced smile wavered, a fleeting shadow crossing his features. "Yes, ma'am. That's right. Got out early, had a good spot." He launched into a description of his morning, a narrative that felt increasingly rehearsed, meticulously constructed. He spoke of the solitude, the crisp air, the peace. Yet when Chen gently pressed for details, what kind of fish were biting that day? "Bobby, any luck with the fly you were using, a specific lure?" Bobby's confident tone began to fray. His answers grew vague, evasive. "Oh, just the usual, you know. Nothing remarkable. Just a quiet morning." His hands, which had been resting casually on the table, now subtly fidgeted, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on the polished surface. The detectives exchanged a brief, knowing glance. Miller leaned forward slightly, her posture still open, but her voice now carrying a sharper edge. "It's interesting, Bobby," she observed, her tone devoid of accusation, yet heavy with implication. "Given your remarkable memory for the most obscure plants, that the details of your own morning should become so elusive." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. "We have evidence, Mr. Hayes, that places you in the vicinity of a very specific, isolated bog. A bog where a rare plant, one you just spoke about, with such passion, grows exclusively. A plant whose seed pod was found with Eleanor Vance." Bobby's composure, though still attempting to hold, showed clear fissures. His jaw tightened, a muscle jumping subtly in his cheek. He continued to feign ignorance, his voice becoming a touch more defensive, a forced tremor entering his words. "I don't know who did this. I'm just a local, trying to help. I wouldn't hurt anyone, especially not Eleanor. She was a good woman." He projected an air of helpful cooperation, yet his entire being now vibrated with a suppressed agitation. The careful narrative he had spun around his alibi once seemingly robust, now began to fray thread by fragile thread under the relentless, calculated pressure of the seasoned detectives. The interrogation, initially a gentle probe, had become a tightening vise, steadily drawing him deeper into its unforgiving center. Following the strained interview, detectives Miller and Chen no longer perceived Bobby Hayes as a mere local eccentric. The glaring inconsistencies in his alibi, coupled with his intimate knowledge of the Aquatica mirabilis bog, propelled him to the undeniable status of prime suspect. The scientific evidence, though initially minute, had provided a critical direction, transforming a sprawling emotional mystery into a precise, targeted investigation. Their next imperative was clear: to uncover the secrets his personal world might conceal. Armed with a swiftly obtained search warrant, a team of officers led by Miller and Chen descended upon Bobby Hayes' secluded cabin. The rustic dwelling, typically a haven of quiet solitude, now bristled with the methodical presence of law enforcement. Every nook and cranny was meticulously examined, every possession inventoried. Though Bobby's home presented as outwardly unremarkable, reflecting his nature-focused life, the detectives understood that profound evil often lay camouflaged by the mundane. Within the small, unheated mudroom, an annex off the main cabin, a crucial piece of the puzzle emerged. Tucked away beneath a worn fishing vest lay a pair of heavy-duty hiking boots. They were heavily caked with mud, betraying recent deep excursions into wet, challenging terrain. Detective Chen carefully bagged them as evidence, a silent, knowing glance exchanged with Miller. These were not the casual footwear of a trail stroller. At the forensics lab, specialists began their painstaking analysis. The mud adhering to Bobby's boots was meticulously matched not just to the general crime scene, but to the unique mineral composition and organic blend of the Aquatica mirabilis bog itself, the very isolated patch where the rare marsh plant thrived. This provided an undeniable trace of movement from that specific hidden location. Even more damning, microscopic synthetic fibers, a distinctive shade of bright pink, were painstakingly extracted from the deep tread of the boots. Under powerful magnification, these fibers were confirmed as an exact match to Eleanor Vance's running top. The physical evidence offered a horrific, irrefutable truth. These fibers had transferred during a violent struggle, forcibly embedded into the soles of Bobby Hayes' footwear. Concurrently, another critical piece of the investigative mosaic solidified. A review of local cell tower data, a digital breadcrumb trail that often contradicted human testimony, revealed a catastrophic breach in Bobby Hayes' carefully constructed alibi. At the precise time Eleanor Vance was attacked, Bobby's mobile phone registered pings from a tower directly covering the immediate vicinity of the Aquatica mirabilis bog. This placement starkly contradicted his earlier claim of being on a distant section of Miller's Creek. The cold, unyielding data left no room for doubt. It placed him undeniably at the heart of the crime, within the chilling embrace of the Creekside clue. Meticulously gathered and analyzed, the scientific evidence began to construct an irrefutable case. The subtle tremors in Bobby's narrative, those fleeting inconsistencies observed during interrogation, now ruptured into profound breaks under the undeniable weight of concrete facts. The unique botanical link, the precise forensic fiber and soil, matches the unyielding cell tower data. Each piece clicked into place, systematically stripping away Bobby Hayes' carefully maintained facade. The investigative net woven from scientific precision and determined police work had tightened around him, leaving no avenue of escape. The arduous path to justice now held a clear, undeniable target. with the irrefutable weight of forensic evidence now firmly in hand, Detectives Miller and Chen brought Bobby Hayes back for what they understood would be the definitive, intense interrogation. The sterile room, once merely a backdrop for his feigned composure, now pressed in like a vice. The air crackled with a palpable tension, stripped of pretense and polite initial probing. Bobby, visibly more agitated than before, was losing his grip on the narrative. Detective Miller, her once empathetic approach, hardened into an unyielding resolve, began without preamble. She laid out the evidence with devastating precision, each piece a chisel strike against his eroding facade. "We have your boots, Bobby. We know where you were. We know Eleanor's fibers are on them." She presented photographs of the mud samples, the unmistakable pink fibers, the detailed botanical report, and then the damning cell tower data. Digital records don't mislead, Bobby. They place you in the Aquatica Mirabilis bog at the exact time Eleanor vanished. Bobby's meticulously constructed persona, that of the harmless nature-loving local, began to visibly fragment. He initially recoiled into aggressive denial, his voice tight, refusing to acknowledge the undeniable. "This is a mistake. You've got the wrong man." "I would never," but his protests rang hollow, utterly devoid of conviction. As Miller systematically presented each piece of evidence, Chen observing his reactions with an unwavering intensity, Bobby's resistance grew weaker, his body language betraying a profound inner turmoil. His eyes darted frantically, desperately searching for an escape that simply wasn't there. Then, in a desperate, cunning attempt to regain some semblance of control, he pivoted, launching into an elaborate, self-serving fabrication. He claimed he had indeed been fishing, but had by tragic coincidence stumbled upon Eleanor's body later that morning. In a moment of overwhelming panic, he asserted he had attempted to move her, to cover her with leaves, to spare her dignity, inadvertently transferring the fibers and mud. "I was terrified," he stammered, his voice laced with a performative tremor. "I didn't know what to do. I saw her there and I panicked." But the detectives were unyielding. They systematically unraveled his new story, exposing its gaping, illogical flaws. Miller's voice, though firm, carried a cold, unassailable logic. Then why, Bobby, would the unique seed pod from that bog be found clutched under her hand, not near your alleged panicked attempt to move her, but beneath her, suggesting it was forcibly grasped during the struggle Chen followed with the insurmountable weight of the cell data? And if you were merely a panicked discoverer, why does your phone place you at the scene, not just when you found her, but at the precise moment of the attack, contradicting every part of your initial alibi? The psychological pressure intensified, relentless and strategic. Bobby's eyes welled with tears, his shoulders slumped, deflating under the weight of the truth. The meticulous, calm exterior he had maintained for days, the persona of the knowledgeable, innocent local, dissolved completely. He lowered his head, his hands clenching into tight fists on the table, then slowly uncurled, revealing the white of his knuckles. Tears, whether born of genuine remorse or a profound self-pity for his inescapable predicament, tracked paths down his face. I didn't mean for it to happen," he choked out, his voice a ragged whisper, barely audible in the suddenly charged silence. The words hung heavy in the air, the sound of a confession finally breaking through the intricate tapestry of lies he had meticulously woven. It was a twisted, self-serving admission, but it was an admission nonetheless, finally bringing the agonizing investigation to its horrifying yet conclusive climax. Following his chilling admission, Bobby Hayes was formally arrested and charged with the murder of Eleanor Vance. The news reverberated through Crestview, a community still reeling from the initial shock and the agonizing weeks of uncertainty. A collective wave of both relief and renewed sorrow washed over the town as the abstract fear of a predator became the concrete reality of a familiar face. For Mark and Brenda Vance, the arrest offered a fragile initial step towards a justice they desperately craved, yet it also solidified the unbearable truth of their loss. Months later, the solemn halls of the county courthouse became the next stage in Eleanor's story as the trial of Robert Hayes commenced. The state's case was methodical, overwhelming, built not on conjecture, but on the bedrock of irrefutable scientific evidence and Bobby's own words. Prosecutor Amelia Davis, a seasoned legal professional known for her meticulous preparation, presented a compelling narrative that skillfully wove together the strands of forensic science with the chilling details of the confession. Expert witnesses took the stand, each adding a crucial layer to the undeniable truth. Dr. Evelyn Thorne, the forensic botanist, detailed the extreme rarity of Aquatica mirabilis and the specific remote conditions of its growth, underscoring Bobby Hayes' unique access to that hidden bog. Forensic analysts testified to the precise match of the mud on Bobby's boots to the crime scene soil, and most powerfully to the microscopic pink fibers from Eleanor's running top, irrefutably embedded in the sole, a silent testament to a violent struggle. The cold, unyielding cell tower data presented with digital precision shattered any lingering doubt about Bobby's alibi, placing him squarely at the scene of the crime. Detectives Miller and Chen, their voices calm and factual, recounted the painstaking investigation. Their procedural descriptions painted a vivid picture of the relentless pursuit of justice, detailing Bobby's initial composure, his shifting narrative during interviews, and the eventual coerced confession, each inconsistency laid bare for the jury. Mark Vance and Brenda Vance sat in the front row, their faces etched with the profound sorrow of their loss, but their gazes unwavering, fixed on the man who had stolen Eleanor from them. Their stoic presence in the courtroom was a silent, powerful testament to the human cost of the crime, a constant reminder of the vibrant life brutally taken. Bobby Hayes' defense team attempted to portray him as a confused man, overwhelmed by the horror of discovering Eleanor's body, his confession born of panic and misunderstanding. They argued that his moving of the body was a misguided attempt at reverence, not a deliberate cover-up. But Prosecutor Davis meticulously exposed the calculated nature of his actions, the layers of deception in his initial statements, and the glaring inconsistencies between his claims and the objective scientific facts. Each piece of defense testimony was systematically dismantled, revealing the deliberate and predatory intent beneath the fabricated innocence. The courtroom, packed daily with media and members of the stunned community, became a crucible of raw emotions. The narrative, once a haunting mystery, had transformed into a stark, undeniable tragedy, now moving towards its inevitable, somber conclusion. The legal process, slow and arduous, steadily advanced, laying bare the truth for all to witness. Justice, in its own deliberate way, was forging its path. The jury deliberated for a remarkably short time. The overwhelming weight of the evidence, forensic links, the anomalous botanical clue, the incriminating cell data, and Bobby Hayes' own fracturing confession had constructed an unassailable edifice of truth. When the foreman rose, his voice cutting through the hushed courtroom, the word guilty resonated with absolute finality. He pronounced it for each charge guilty on all counts. A collective exhalation, a complex blend of profound relief and renewed sorrow rippled through the packed gallery. For Mark and Brenda Vance, seated steadfastly in the front row, it was a moment of profound yet bittersweet vindication. Justice, in its slow, arduous, and often agonizing progression, had at last been realized. Weeks later, the court reconvened for the solemn sentencing phase. This was the pivotal moment where the cold facts of the law would be infused with the raw personal devastation of Eleanor's absence. Brenda, Vance Eleanor's mother, rose to deliver her victim impact statement. Her hands clasped tightly before her trembled subtly, but her gaze, though glistening with unshed tears, held an unwavering resolve as she turned to face Bobby Hayes directly. Her voice, initially a fragile whisper, grew in strength with each word. "The man sitting before us," she began, her voice quivering with emotion, "has stolen more than a life. He tore a chasm of grief into our existence." Eleanor was vibrant, full of light, and inspiration to so many. "And you, Robert Hayes, mercilessly extinguished that light." She paused, taking a deep, shuddering breath, her eyes boring into the impassive figure of her daughter's killer. "You deserve never to again experience the freedom you stole from Eleanor. Your actions have scarred us, scarred this community beyond repair. You belong in a cage." Her words, delivered with a mother's fierce and enduring love, were a direct accusatory volley aimed at the perpetrator, demanding an accountability that transcended mere legal statute. Mark Vance followed his voice, heavy with the crushing permanence of his loss, yet imbued with a quiet, resolute determination. He spoke not of vengeance, but of Eleanor's indomitable spirit, of the shared future they had meticulously planned, now irrevocably stolen. "Every morning, I still instinctively brace myself for her footsteps," he recounted, his voice thick with emotion. "Every sunset, I am haunted by the absence of her smile. You didn't just take her from us, you stripped a piece of all our futures." Yet his words also carried a profound promise. Her memory will not be defined by this brutal act, but by the boundless joy she brought and the justice she so deserved. "We will ensure her light shines on." Bobby Hayes, now a convicted killer, sat impassive, his deception completely stripped away, leaving only the grim, unvarnished reality of his actions exposed to the world. No flicker of remorse, no trace of contrition crossed his features. His calm exterior, once a meticulously calculated mask of innocence, had hardened into a defiant, unfeeling shell. The courtroom bore witness to the stark, agonizing contrast, the raw, profound grief of a family irrevocably shattered, confronted by the cold, emotionless presence of the man responsible. The verdict had closed one chapter, but the poignant voice of grief ensured that Eleanor Vance's story and the profound, enduring impact of her loss would echo far beyond the courthouse walls. Even in its deepest shadows, the natural world holds secrets, but justice, tirelessly sought, will always find a way to make them speak. If you're compelled by the unwavering pursuit of justice, and how even the smallest details like the Creekside clue can unravel the darkest secrets, then subscribe to Shadow Files for more gripping investigations. Don't forget to subscribe to Shadow Files and hit the notification bell.